Hey Growlithe fans, it's me again, Victor Salinas, with another questions and answers video. On this video, unlike some of the other questions and answers videos I've done, I'm just going to answer one question. I usually do 4 or 5 from different people, but I get one email from one gentleman here that I want to answer his question in its entirety. It's a couple different questions wrapped up into one email, and I liked it so much and I get a lot of similar ones that I'm just going to focus on this one person's question on this video. But before we get started, I'd like to invite everyone that has any questions for me about writing, creativity, my work, me personally, to ask me in the comments section. So leave your question or comment or thoughts in the comments section and I'll feature it in an upcoming video. So the email comes from a gentleman in the United Kingdom. His name is Valen. First, Valen, I want to thank you personally for reaching out to me with your email. And like I said in the response email, I like this question so much that I wanted to make a video out of it, and I am definitely a man of my word, and here I am, I'm going to answer your question to the best of my ability. So to read Valen's question, he says, okay, basically I can't write. Pretty basic statement there. Like, I have all these ideas in my head and I think it's the best thing ever, and when it comes around to sitting down and putting pen to paper, I will probably write a maximum of nearly a chapter, and that would be it. It just sits there collecting dust. I have thought up 3 different separate story ideas, 2 being crime stories and the 3rd being a fantasy medieval type. It really is discouraging. I can play the events of all 3 stories in my head over and over, the beginning and the end over and over again, and I can't get anywhere when actually writing. My 2 weaknesses that I'm aware of is the fact that when I write, when I read it, I will always think it's not good enough and try to edit the wording. I don't know how to get out of this habit, but it's really annoying. I constantly think my writing is not good enough, and this is especially true when I read other books, like for example, a book from A Song in Ice and Fire series. My second fault is probably the fact that I don't plan much about the middle of my stories. I know how they start, I know how they end, but for the life of me I can't figure out the middle parts. I do have a few ideas for middle events, but then I struggle to write to get to that point because I start to think, well, I need this to happen so I can get to the middle event that I had planned, and well, I just don't know. Please, if you have any advice on how to get past the first chapter, I would greatly appreciate it, mate. So Valen, again, thank you very much for the email, and I'm going to address each one of your different concerns separately. So in regards to the first part of your, the problems that you're relating to me, where you say that while you're writing, you can't stop like editing it in your head, you know, going back and looking at it and thinking it's not good enough. I think all of us that have tried to make something, whether it's writing or drawing or painting or graphic design, something like that, something creative, you get caught in this trap, we've all been there, of editing, self-editing over and over and over again, and then focusing on that and not actually getting any work done. I still fall into that trap all the time, and it's just a matter of discipline, of telling yourself that I'm not going to judge my creation until it's finished. I'm not going to judge it until I have it in a state of readiness, so I can take a step back and look at the whole thing. Because if you're building a building, say, and you just dig out the foundation and fill in the concrete to make the bottom floor, and you look at it, well, this is a crappy building. Well, it's not done yet. You have to wait until you get to a later stage where you can evaluate the entire thing and then say, what do I need to change? You know, so what I like to do personally, Valen, and what I would suggest that you do when you're writing a novel, say, or a short story, don't look back at any of the chapters. I never go back until I'm totally done. So if I'm writing, you know, a novel that's going to be 35 chapters, 40 chapters or something, I get through the entire first draft and I never look back. A lot of times I'm writing something and the way that I plan it going will change. A character will totally change direction. I don't even go back and change the previous parts to match the new direction. I just keep running with it. And so if you were to read that draft without it being revised, it wouldn't make any sense because the character has totally changed direction or a new character is inserted that hasn't been properly introduced. And I just write that down in a notebook and tell myself to go back and fix it. So after I'm totally done with the first draft, I just get it all out there, I set it aside, I don't think about it, I don't talk about it, I don't look at it for probably 5 days, maybe a week. And then I come back with my notes, and I print everything off, and then I read through it line by line and mark it up with my red pen, and then, you know, I tell myself what I need to go back and fix, then I go back in the story, and then I worry about it. So that starts the whole editing process. That could be a whole other video. But while I'm writing something, whether it's a one-page email to someone or it's, like I said, a 35, 40 chapter novel, I never look back on the previous parts until I'm done with the whole thing, until I'm done with one draft, then I go back and do it. Because if you don't do that, like you're describing, you'll constantly think like, this isn't good enough, I have to go back and change it. And then you change it, and then it doesn't match the rest of what you've done, and then you say, well, this isn't good enough, and you just get in this like vicious cycle that you can never get out of. So you just have to switch that part of your brain off and get one draft done all the way through, and then worry about fixing it. And that's really the thing. Any writer who's finished something in its entirety will tell you, one, it's an arduous process, which I think you've found out early, which is good. And two, the best part of it, what really makes it good, comes in the revision. Anyone can pound out a rough draft that can be pretty decent. It takes successive, trudging along and persistence and many rounds of editing and revisions to polish it to make it complete. So to use another analogy, when you dig a diamond out of the ground, if you've ever seen a raw diamond, it looks like just a lumpy piece of crap, essentially. It just looks like a big brown turd. And it's not really very nice to look at because it hasn't been cut yet. It has to be cut, it has to be polished, it has to be brought to a higher standard. The raw diamond from the earth is not complete, and your raw draft is not going to be. And if you think that if you get it in your head that it has to be right the first time, you'll never get to the later stages. So don't worry too much about the first draft. It's just the first draft. I would focus on just getting it done, just getting it on paper. That's the first big milestone. So in regards to the second part of what you brought up about the middle of the story, if you don't have a middle, you essentially don't have a story. And one thing that I can think of is maybe some of the middle parts that you think should be there don't have to be there. I'm a big fan of making things as brief as possible. I guess you could say that my stories do have a middle, in that's between the beginning and the end, but I like to think of each part of what I do as almost a self-contained unit that makes sense in and of itself. Each scene has a beginning, middle, and end that kind of stand on their own, and then they get put together. So I like to make things move really fast, and there is such a concept called the mushy middle. And that's what you're describing. It just seems like it's not going anywhere. The characters are treading water. Maybe a lot of that stuff needs to get cut out of your draft, because if you don't know where it's going, it might not really need to be there. That being said, it's easy to think of things in beginning, middle, and end. And if you're comfortable with that, I've talked about this in a previous video with like an act structure, 3-act structure. If you want to go for that, it is a really great and easy tool to use when structuring a story. So the 3 basic acts are, at the beginning part of your story, you have the protagonist introduced to their challenge or challenges. And in the middle parts, the protagonist is actually going to face those challenges head on. So they're going to be tried to see if they can beat their challenges. And in the end, they have to deal with the aftermath of whether they succeed or fail or what they choose to do about facing their challenges. So just to give a brief example from my work from the first Grauwalt book, The Sword and Its Servant, the protagonist is Ainsa. She's a teenage girl that is imprisoned by the monstrous Loa species. In the first part of the book, you get introduced to Ainsa and her companions that are imprisoned, and you get a feel for what their conditions are like. And I won't spoil anything, but she's finally comes to terms with the fact that she needs to escape. She has a traumatic event that really pushes her to do that. And so she understands what her challenge is going to be. She has to escape the Loa. She doesn't know anything about the outside world, but she knows that she has to get as far away as possible. And the middle part is her confronting all the obstacles to achieve her goal. So that's what makes her the protagonist. The antagonist is working against her, trying to keep her from escaping. In the middle, she meets an ally named Klein, whom she realizes that she has to rely on to escape because he knows the outside world and she doesn't. He's powerful and she's weak. She faces all of these obstacles, but then gets tempted by the kind of corrupted power of Klein. And by the end, when she has to deal with the consequences of her escape, she realizes that she's already started to succumb to her allies' corrupted ways. So, you know, that's the end that sets up the next book, is that although she achieved what she wanted to do, it came at a really heavy price that she didn't expect. So there you can kind of see the three phases where the protagonist is introduced to their challenge. The middle part that you're talking about is just a series of those challenges until they meet their goal. And the end is whether they actually meet it, or they fail, or somewhere in between, or maybe there's just another adventure yet ahead. But there's a sort of conclusion as to what the next thing that's going to happen. They either made it, didn't make it, or there's still another leg of the journey, is really what the end should be. So lastly, Valen, with your question in regards to finishing or getting past your first chapter, really don't worry about it. When I sat down to start writing the Growlithe books for the first time, I had a kind of vague idea of what I wanted. I wrote it down on note cards, which I used to outline my chapters. So every chapter was just written on a little note card with a couple lines of the ideas of what I wanted to happen. And every morning I would sit down with a note card and type away. I wasn't worried about whether it was good or bad. One day, you know, many weeks in, I was done with the note cards. And then I went back and revised it. And most of the work is going to come from revision. I mean, you can make a manuscript in probably a week or two if you really, really pounded it out. But the really hard work comes from the revision. So just turn off your editing capabilities, you know, turn off that part of your brain when you're doing this, and just realize that that part is going to come later. Don't try to jump the gun. Don't try to do it now. That's really the wrong time to even worry about it. Because I know, Valen, I can tell by your impassioned email that you want it to be as great as you can possibly make it. And I'll tell you that the only way you can edit something is if you have the complete draft done. So just concentrate on getting it out. Just concentrate on getting it on paper first, and then you can come back and worry about making it absolutely perfect. So Valen, I hope that that answers your question. If it doesn't answer your question entirely, or there's some other parts missing, certainly let me know in the comments or email me. I'm always open to conversing with you and all of my viewers. And for everyone else, if you have any questions about me, my work, me personally, any comments or suggestions, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to get back to you. And if you have a question, I will feature it in an upcoming questions and answers video. As always, thank you for watching, and don't forget to rate and share this video if you liked it, and subscribe to the Growlithe channel. I'll talk to you guys next time.